is facing an energy crisis. It is common knowledge that the persistent blackouts are affecting the social and economic well-being of Malawians. Time and again, stakeholders have said that renewable energy can be a solution to Malawi's problems. But it seems not much is happening on the ground. Well, in this edition of the Green Cafe, I'm joined by Mr. Edgar Kapiza Bayani. He is the country director for Community Energy Malawi. We'll talk about renewable energy in this edition of the Green Cafe. Welcome, Mr. Bayani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muloza Banda.
Thank you very much. Maybe first things first. Tell us more about Community Energy Malawi.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Zodiak, for this wonderful program that articulates issues on the environment and indeed the green living altogether. Community Energy Malawi is an NGO that was born out of a project. Around 2011, the Scottish government and the government of Malawi came together and they came up with that project called the Malawi Renewable Energy Acceleration Program. That program implemented quite a number of projects across the country, and one of the strands of that program was the Community Energy Development Program, which implemented the solar installations and cook stove making or production projects, as well as implemented grants in the selling of solar lamps across the country. So in the course of implementing of that project, it came to the minds of those who were managing then to say, no, I think there is a lot that we can do. After the project, what else should we do? Hence the idea to come up with Community Energy Malawi was born. So we are an NGO with our mission to help Malawian communities generate sustainable energy solutions to meet their energy needs. Our vision is to see Malawian communities access sustainable and affordable energy. And perhaps you can ask, how do we do these things? We do it through 5 mission objectives. The first one, we facilitate a mutually supportive network of renewable energy players. And then secondly, we do fundraising and fund renewable energy projects across the country. Thirdly, is advocacy and lobbying, especially on green policies. Fourthly, we also look at capacity building capabilities of communities. So in principle, those are our key activities. Currently, we've got projects across the country, the largest being an 80 kilowatt solar microgrid in Chancy Muloza Village. We are also implementing another project that is advocating for green and inclusive energy policies. And we also have other projects that are looking at scoping the potential of hydrogen used for powering isolated communities.
You've talked about your interaction with communities and the project that you are implementing in Chancy. I wanted to understand, are these projects demand-driven, or you just identify an area and you implement a project?
All the projects are demand-driven. I was just mentioning about the projects that was the precursor to Community Energy Malawi. Under the Malawi Renewable Energy Acceleration Program, the CEDP, or Community Energy Development Program, developed a model for community engagement, community-led renewable energy projects. How can communities initiate and implement projects? And that's the reason why we came up with a renewable energy toolkit for Malawi, which communities can use to identify and plan and implement renewable energy projects. So through that, we have developed a model of engaging communities to prioritize their needs. And I think one thing that I must mention is we are trying as much as possible not to implement energy projects in isolation, or indeed to look at energy as an isolated case. As much as possible, try to link it with the other development priorities in the community. So, like in Mchinji, the community that side, they are dairy farmers, they are irrigation farmers, and then they also do quite a number of other businesses. They wanted a maize mill in the community, but then they are 16 kilometers away from the national grid. And therefore, the option was for us to give a microgrid that can power all those needs. So they are demand-driven.
So you're dealing with groups, not necessarily individuals in this
Community Energy Malawi works with individuals and the communities and the groups that are interested in renewable energy. So as I've already said, we facilitate a mutually supportive network. Even some of those members in that network are individuals. With journalists there, even energy traditional organizations are there, because energy is a golden thread. You need energy here in Zodiak. Everyone needs energy. They need energy in the health sector. So even though you are not traditionally energy-focused organization or institution, still more you find that you need energy, and we call that a nexus, energy nexus to the other development priorities. Yeah.
Now, we're talking about blackouts each and every day. We're talking about 6 hours.
Now 9 hours.
Now 9 hours.
Yeah.
Renewable energy has been touted to be maybe a solution to Malawi's energy problems. First things first, how is the uptake? You've been here for some time now, the time you introduced your project, up to now, you are now Community Energy Malawi. How is the uptake of renewable energy technologies out there?
I was just in a conference the past 2 days at BICC, and during that we were arguing about statistics. Currently, the statistics that we use, we always say only 10% of the population is connected to modern energy. In actual sense, another survey by Business Innovation Facility found out that about 12% of the country uses the solar lanterns and all that. So we are saying, probably we could say now it's 22% of people have got access to some form of clean energy. Yeah, so I could say the uptake of renewable energy technologies is on the increase, even though it's not at the level that we wanted it to go up. And largely it has been access to solar powered technologies. So it's either solar, the rooftop solar installations, or the solar lanterns, the small solar lanterns that we know. Yeah, so that has been largely. But I have to also mention that as a country, I think so far our electricity is from renewable energy sources, hydro, 99% hydro, and then on the other hand, I have to also mention that we cook using biomass, which is also a renewable resource, except that I think they just want to have a sustainable way of managing those resources. So in terms of renewable energy, there is an uptake, but it is not at the pace that
what is the challenge at this point in time?
Well, there are several key challenges. I would contextualize them at the individual as well as at the institutional level. At the individual level, I think there are the issues of affordability. Some of the solar home systems that probably we are selling, they cost around 100,000. That's probably a good solar home system that has got 3-4 lights. And I think you look at our poverty levels, I think that is something that is on the higher side. Then there is the issue of the quality aspects of the technologies. We still have porous borders, I could say so. And we still have regulators that are not yet have not yet grown teeth. So much so that everyone is free to import whatever they want. As a result, you'd find that the substandard materials or substandard technologies are found their way into the country, and when people buy them, 2-3 months they are gone. Definitely, people lose trust in that. On the other hand, on institutional-wise, we're talking of the microgrid that we're implementing in Mchinji. That's the way to go if we're going to increase access and the uptake of renewable energy technologies, because the microgrid, what it means is it's a standalone system from the national grid. Communities that are isolated, they can still have power without necessarily relying on the national grid. We can, instead of overloading the grid, we can always offload some of that burden by microgrid. So the challenges have been, to some extent, it was policy. Of course, we are glad that some of the issues that we had, government has taken care of. Mayor has done some reforms. And then there is the new energy policy that in some way gives us a bit of latitude to do that. The other thing is, issues of finance. For one to go out and implement a project, you really need to have finances. But, the interest rates in our country are very high. So we always rely on either grants or probably it has to be all these loans from other multilateral players like World Bank, who probably gives a bit of flexible terms. And I think the other problem that I could mention is to do with the business models. I think the focus all along has been on the big systems like, the national grid, the ESCOM and all that. And I think we don't have models really that probably target microgrids in the country, which are being developed now.
I think I'll take you back to the project that you're coming up in Chinji, the project that is trying to help out in terms of electricity challenges in Malawi. I just wanted to find out the operation part of it. How is it going to work in terms of the communities? How are they going to benefit? Is it something that it's a business model, or maybe just explain on that?
Well, thank you very much. Our model is the build, own and operate model. What has happened is the community there, they want electricity. They are traveling 12 kilometers to access a maize mill, either in Mchinji or they have to go across the border to Zambia in Magwelo. The community there, they want energy or electricity to power a milk cooling plant, because once they milk their cattle, their dairy cows, they have to take the milk to Mchinji. And if you don't go there, which is about 10 kilometers away, it means their perishable products, they have lost it. Yeah, so what the community needs is energy or electricity, and what we are providing is that service. So as Community Energy Malawi, we've got a subsidiary enterprise, we call it CM Trading. This is like the utility company that is going to manage that whole installation, generation, and transmission. So the communities will be buying electricity from us, just like you and me buy from Westcom. I know you might ask, why did you opt for that model? This is a complicated system. You're talking of 80 kilowatt. That probably might go to 20 kilowatts in the next 2 years once we're done with the phase 1. You can't just leave it to the community to say, you manage this project. It's a complicated system. It will have complicated monitoring equipment and all that. So what we said is, what we want is, the community want electricity, let us provide the electricity, and then they buy that service.
How many people can benefit from the facility?
Currently, the phase 1, which we're doing now, the installation of the 80 kilowatts, we start getting 200 customers. Out of those 200 customers, there is one maize mill, and then there are quite a number of households that will be connected there, a school, some 2 churches, and an under 5 clinic. But the target is to connect the whole stretch of 4 villages that in the Stolo community, which is about 880 households. So phase 1 is looking at 80 kilowatts, and then the phase 2 is going to probably increase the generation to around 150 or 200 kilowatts, so that we serve the other villages as well.
I wanted to take you to the issue of the policies that we have in Malawi in terms of energy policies and other policies to do with energy that we have in place. And your work as Community Energy Malawi, how do you ensure that you are in line with government policies?
Thank you very much. As Community Energy Malawi, we believe that we are an NGO or a corporate player that must complement on government efforts. And in that complementation, we do it in 2 ways. When we see that things are not going right, we present our policy options that probably, why can't we go this route? If things are working, it means also it's working with us. I'll just mention the current energy policy, the revised one. We have managed to push in quite a number of suggestions that have been taken on board, and our work is in line with the rural electrification policy of the country, because the government is keen on increasing access to clean energy to the rural areas, and I think the focus has been largely using the Malawi Rural Electrification Program, MAREP. So our work is complementing on that. And then secondly, we're also in line with the government's goals on climate change mitigation. Our project is renewable energy in nature. We're using the sun. We are decarbonizing the continent. That is also in tune with government's aspirations in that regard. So we make sure as much as possible that our work must go in line with the government policies. And if you look at the current national energy policy, you find that there is a completely whole section on renewable energy on its own. And then there are even reforms to do with the Rural Electrification Fund to make sure that it not only supports MARE, but it should also support players like us to also help communities access clean energy.
This is Green Cafe, and in this edition, I'm talking to Mr. Edgar Kapiza Bayani, who's the Country Director for Community Energy Malawi. We'll be right back. Welcome back to this edition of the Green Cafe, and in the program I'm talking to Mr. Edgar Kapiza Bayani, who is the Country Director for Community Energy Malawi, and we're talking about renewable energy. There is the talk of the big shift, Mr. Bayani, and this is one of the initiatives that has been touted outside Malawi, but we haven't seen much on the ground here in Malawi. Anything happening on the big shift?
Yeah, I'm surprised that we haven't seen much, because in Malawi we also do the big shift, and Community Energy Malawi is part of the big shift campaign. In Malawi, the initiative is being probably, I could say, led by Christian Aid, and the civil society network on climate change. Essentially, the big shift is about advocating and lobbying governments and stakeholders that be to sort of like divest from carbon intensive economies to low carbon initiatives. So in our case, as a renewable energy focused organization, obviously our interest is to make sure that we move away from things like coal, of course the diesel powered gensets, and opting for renewable energies or greener sources of energy.
So what exactly is happening on the ground? Because maybe that should be, maybe something is happening on the ground, but maybe there's lack of awareness on the part of the rest of the communities, or maybe Malawians as a whole.
Well, I think the Big Shift campaign is, I could say, a campaign that all of us, the players that are subscribed to green economies or green technologies, are part of. So we are there as part of that campaign, and each one individually is doing something that has to contribute towards that. For example, Community Energy Malawi, we are engaging the nation at national as well as at community and district level. We have got a project that we call the Malawi for Green and Inclusive Decentralized Energy. That's Malawi Glide. Currently, we're just targeting only Chitipa and Nchisi and Baraka, where essentially we're looking at advocating for the adoption of green and inclusive energy policies at the household, community, and the district council level. And with that, we are supporting communities with the capacity building, the sensitization meetings on how they can initiate renewable energy projects, how they can demand renewable energy related activities from the councils. And then we have also supported the councils on how to do the village action planning process, the district development planning process, how to develop socioeconomic planning documents that have got the energy issues or green energy issues embedded in them. And I think we've just developed a village, what we call guidelines for developing of mainstreaming energy into the VAP process. So it's just the guidelines that are complementing on the VAP guidelines that have already been developed by government. So that's what we're doing on the ground. And on the other hand, you find that the CISANET is also engaging the government. You find that CRISHANET is engaging government, engaging the stakeholders at those levels. But probably some of the questions could be better answered by the leadership in the Big Shift campaign, but seriously in Malawi, we are part of that. And some of the reforms that are in the policy, in the energy policy, the climate change policy and all that, they are part of the Big Shift campaign.
So there's been a buy-in from government?
There are a lot of it buying. Actually, we are very thankful that the government is committed towards the green economy and the green initiatives. And every time that I've got engagements with them, I think it hasn't been the confrontation type of cat and mouse relationship. It has been more of positive collaboration. We present our policy options, they also present theirs, and then we engage, and at the end of the day, at least reach some compromise.
Do you think renewable energy can be a solution to Malawi's problems, or is it sustainable? Is it something that can contribute to Malawi's economy?
Very, very, very much. And actually, the answer is an emphatic yes, a capital yes for that matter. I'll just give a brief. Over 4,000 megawatt potential of geothermal, between 600 to 1,000 something potential of hydro. Mzimba has got more than 50 megawatt potential of wind. We've got almost year-round daytime sun across the country. All these are the huge potentials that we have. As I've already said, it's just a matter of putting our house in order, putting our act together, how best we can harness this. Renewable energy is the way to go. And for Malawi, we're a small country. All these potentials that I've said, they are more than necessary. I mean, they are more than the demand that we have. Ejeng was just telling us that their demand projections are around 600 to 700 megawatts. And I've already said that geothermal is more than 4,000 megawatt potential. The hydro, the rivers that we have in Malawi, close to about 1,500 megawatt. So you see that we have that huge potential. It's just a matter of putting the house in order. Let the IPPs, the big IPPs, do it with ESCOM. Let players like ourselves do the microgrids. At the end of the day, when all these things put together, you find that we have the solution.
Do we have interest out there for investors to get into this renewable energy business?
I think you and I, we've been following in the papers. About a year ago, I think the Department of Energy was informing us that over 22 investors have expressed interest to come and do IPPs in Malawi. That's independent power, to be independent power producers. And the country or the government has just reviewed the Electricity Management Act, and that has relied on unbundling of ESCOM to make sure that other players can come in. And I think just a month ago, we had Dr. Mpinganjira, the chair of ESCOM, telling us that no, there are two other players coming in. One will be generating power from Ruo River in Mulanje, and then there will be another one doing solar in Takataka, and it should be in Salima. Yeah, so it's there. The interest is there, but I think to some extent, of course, other investors complain of probably slow progresses, the bureaucracy, whatever. But I should believe at the level where we are, we have realized that we need to work with haste to make sure that the investors come in, they find our environment conducive, and then they work with us.
You've talked about your involvement in advocacy issues. What are some of the key advocacy issues that maybe you are dialoguing at this point in time with government?
I think quite a number of the issues that we dialogue with government, they have been reflected in the national energy policy, like I think in our case, because we're an energy focused organization. Even though we still continue dialoguing with them, especially on, for example, one of the issues that we're still dialoguing with them is on the Rural Electrification Fund. The Rural Electrification Fund, I think so far probably ESCOM has been the largest beneficiary because of Malawi. But what we are saying is let us also be benefiting from that. And the Rural Electrification Fund, according to the Rural Electrification Act, there are some sections that are not being implemented, and yet they are in the Act. There is, for example, a section on section 12, 13, and 14 of the Rural Electrification Act, if not mistaken. But these sections, essentially, they talk about there shall be a credit manager, and then the Rural Electrification Fund shall have credit guarantees for other players, and then it shall fund other initiatives other than the MAREP or ESCOM. Yeah, so what we're saying is these sections just have to be implemented, because once they're implemented, we're going to have also access to those resources, and at the end of the day, we're going to support communities. Of course, I must hasten to add that for our project in Mchinji, the Malawi Rural Electrification Program has to some extent supported us in the sense that I think they've supported transmission lines and some poles, because we said, well, this is a rural electrification program. We, at the end of the day, supporting government, and we're doing this project in partnership or in collaboration with the Department of Energy. Isn't there a way for you to support some of these issues? So they supported the poles, the transmission lines, and even some training for our staff on generation and transmission.
We're looking to quick solutions to Malawi's electricity problems. Importing electricity, for example, from neighboring countries and investing in renewable energy. Which one should be the option, the quick solution?
I think both are solutions, because Malawi is aiming at joining the Southern African power pool. And I think we are in a globalized economy where there is no way we can be working in isolation. So the power pool is something that all the countries have joined in, and I think we just have to be part of that. Surely, in some way, one has to be there when we are in some problems. But investing in renewable energy is probably one of the key solutions. I mean, investing in our own generation sources. As I've already said, there is that huge potential. What is just required to do is put the act in order, the house in order, let all the players come, let people like ourselves, organizations like ourselves who are doing in the communities, have got our business models that are working, be supported, and we do implement them. I mean, even if you look at the Malawi renewable energy strategy, it clearly spells out that for communities that are living 5 kilometers away from the grid, and the community or the village has got close to 200 to 250 or more than that households, they are better off with their own standalone decentralized microgrid than probably being connected to the national grid. So we can put our grid together to make sure that the national grid goes this way, and then the off-grid solutions go the other way. At the end of the day, we meet when we increase access to energy.
In this program, Green Cafe, we talk about environment issues, climate change. How do we link up this whole discussion: renewable energy, environment, and climate change.
Beautiful. I think as you are aware, we're talking of climate change issues, and we are trying to avert the temperatures from rising by 2 degrees. And one of the issues is to make sure that we reduce the carbon emissions. And the renewable energy is one sure way of reducing the emissions. So the linkage of renewable energy environment is that with renewable energy, you keep the environment clean, you remove the carbon from the atmosphere or you reduce them, and then that helps to minimize the climate change effects that we've been talking about. So renewable energy is both an adaptive as well as a mitigative measure to climate change effects.
As we conclude this edition of Green Cafe, Mr. Bayani, we're talking about an energy crisis that we have.
Yes.
9 hours without electricity. What should be the quick solution? What should we do as Malawi at this point in time?
First things first, we are glad that the Millennium Challenge Compact is gone, and with it we have upgraded our transmission services. We are told that government is looking into importing some power from Mozambique. I think that should be hastened. Probably that should be our relief, because currently to talk of putting out new plants, be it solar or what, it will take years. I think planning and implementation of a hydro probably can take even sometimes 10 years. So what we need is, one, we have to make sure that we tap into the power pool from Mozambique, probably as we have interested, because now we have upgraded our transmission. And then secondly, that's now the short term. And then also we have to make sure that organizations like Community Energy Malawi and other players like Praga to Action that are doing all these off-grid solutions are supported. Because at the end of the day, like what we're doing in Imchinji, for example, is something that within 2 years we've done 100 kilowatts. Someone can also do somewhere there. Within 2 years they've done their own 100 kilowatts. At the end of the day, all these small things will add up into something bigger. Over and above that, I think it's a matter of putting our act together. I think I've kept on repeating this thing. We are in these deep problems to some extent because someone at some point slept on his duty, be it at ESCOM or even be it in government as well. If we were vigilant enough to look at these things ahead, to plan of these things ahead, we wouldn't have been in this problem. After we've been experiencing this for the past 4, 5, 6 years. So in other words, we had the chance to sort of like plan and say, what do we do in the next 5, 6 years to avert this? So it's a matter of putting our act together, make sure that we rise above self-interest. Corruption must be taken out completely. We must take out all this interest of let us follow the protocols that are laid down. Let us make sure that we put the nation first, and then everything will flow as it's supposed to be.
Mr. Edgar Kapiza, Bayani, it was a pleasure being with you in the program.
Thank you very much, Mr. Muloza.
And this is where we end this edition of the Green Cafe. And my guest was Mr. Edgar Kapiza Bayani, Country Director for Community Energy Malawi. And we were talking about renewable energy, which has been touted as a solution to Malawi's electricity problems. Until we meet again in the next edition of the Green Cafe, my name is Chancy Muloza Banda. Goodbye.